Elder Futhark, and welcome to Wyrdwayz. So this is an introductory video to my new rune series, which is called Wyrdwayz, which is all about the Anglo-Saxon, or Old English if you would prefer, runes. So I'd like to begin by saying hi, or Ayla, to all of my subscribers. It has been a while since I made any rune videos. I've been trying to make this for quite a while, but life has been busy and rather challenging. So anyway, I'm just glad to be here on my makeshift throne in the woods to bring you this new rune series. So as I said, I'm going to be talking all about the Anglo-Saxon or Old English runes. Now, I'm just going to begin by giving you a bit of background information and then tell you why I'm making this series and what I hope it's going to be all about. So, if we go back to the 5th century, now during this time, what we see is the Elder Futhark evolving. Now in Scandinavia, it was shortened and became what we know as the younger Futhark. However, on the continent, most probably in Frisia, it evolved, and there are a number of sound changes basically brought about by the fact that the Germanic language had evolved and they needed new sounds. So these first changes, as I said, most probably happened in Frisia, and this is why these runes are also known as the Anglo-Frisian runes. So first we're going to have a look at these initial changes. So basically what happened was there were a couple of new runes added, which were both variants to look at on the rune that we know as Arnsus from the Elder Futhark. So let's have a look at those runes. So first we see the one which we would know as Arnsus from the Elder Futhark, which is now called Ash, and the sound that it represents is as in cat. Now next we have a variation on this rune, which is Ark, and the sound that this one makes is as in father. Then we see the rune known as Os. Now this was actually moved to be the 4th position, which is why we see this rune set later to be known as the Futhorc. And the sound that this became later was an O sound, as in os. And then we'll see the rune which we know from the Elder Futhark as Odal or Othala, and within these runes it's known as Ethel. Now this used to be the O sound, the os sound, but it's changed to a kind of an a more, this is not a sound we really get in the English language, but it's found in the French language. And it's kind of a nasaled sound. So these are the early changes. So obviously runes don't change all of a sudden, and these changes happened in stages. So this was the earliest stage. So what we're going to do now is have a look at some archaeological finds that show us these early sound changes. Now the first one I want to show you is the Undley Bracteate. Now this was dug up in 1981 at Undley Common, which is near Lakenheath in Suffolk. Now this is, this is just down the road, literally just down the road from where I come from, where I grew up and where I was living at that time. So, and it's, it's just literally a stone's throw from where I know my ancestors were living, as back in 1605 is the furthest I've gone back. So it's interesting stuff for me. Now a bracteate is an ornament or pendant which is modelled on a Roman medallion or coin, and you can see that this one is, the influence is very heavily Roman, with the face in profile in the centre of the bracteate. Now there's not that many found in England, but most of them are found in Denmark, with lesser numbers found in Sweden and Norway and on the continent. So this is a very rare and a very early example, and you can see it has the runes on there, and it has the Anglo-Frisian runes on there. Now this one is believed to have been made in northern Germany or perhaps in southern Denmark, but some runologists actually believe that it was made in England. Now you can see beneath the face we have the image of Romulus and Remus, the mythological founding members of Rome. Now this is interesting because the story of Romulus and Remus seems to have really struck a chord with our Anglo-Saxon ancestors, because this image is also depicted on the left panel of the Frank's casket, which is an 8th century casket made from a whalebone. So we could ask ourselves, why were the Anglo-Saxons so taken by this image of Romulus and Remus? Now, one theory is perhaps goes back to the Indo-European cult of the divine twins, and this is a theme which is seen in many different Indo-European cultures, and we know that this was something worshipped by the Germanic people on the continent, because we have information from Cornelius Tacitus, and on the continent they were known as the Alkis. So I can just read you what Tacitus told us about this, and what it says is, the Nar Havali proudly point out a grove associated with an ancient worship. The presiding priest dresses like a woman, but the deities are said to be the counterpart of our Castor and Pollux. This indicates their character, but their name is the Alkis. There are no images, and nothing suggests that the cult is of foreign origin, but they are certainly worshipped as young men and as brothers. So this is interesting, this image of the divine brothers. And we're told by Bede that the original conquerors of Britain were Hengist and Horsa, whose names both mean horse, and that they led the invasion in the 5th century, bringing with them the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes. Now it's very likely that this is no more than pure myth, but of course it does place it firmly in the context of this cult of the divine twins, these two brothers. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back to the Undley Bracteate. And as I said, this shows the very beginning of the process with the very first and earliest sound changes. Now, it's undoubtedly a runic charm, and I'm sure I shall talk more about those in the course of this series. And what it actually says is Gagoga Magu Medu, which is translated as raw, strong reward. Now, this is most probably a runic charm in a military sense, so it's very interesting. Now, some people think that it actually means raw, strong and mead. They think that the word is Medu, which is spelt the same, but it has the diacritic mark above the E. And I think I have spoken about mead before, and I'm sure I will again. In fact, I know I will again in this series, because mead is representative of more than just an alcoholic liquor. But I do believe in this context it is raw, strong reward, and it is a charm, a military charm, a charm of battle. Anyway, I'm going to show you another example of these earliest changes with these Ansus type runes being used, which show the sound changes. And so what we're going to look at now is the Caister by Norwich brooch, also known as the Harford Farm brooch, because it was found on Harford Farm, and it dates from AD 610 to 650. And it's absolutely beautiful brooch. It's just divine. It's absolutely amazing. But what's scratched on the back, we can see runes, and again we see these variants of the Ansus rune. Oh, and I've just completely forgotten but I wanted to show you these. I think I've mentioned before that my mum is a metal detectorist, and my dad has a farm in Cambridgeshire close to the Suffolk border, and that very close to that land there was a pagan Anglo-Saxon cemetery which was excavated early in the 20th century. And anyway, my mum's dug these up. Now these, if I just show you, these are Roman coins which have been drilled, presumably by Anglo-Saxons, and they would have worn these around their necks as pendants. Now, while the rich people had things such as the Undley Bracteate, the poorer people would have made do with these. Let me just show you. There we go. You can see that these are Roman coins which have been drilled. Aren't they just incredible? Just great to think that somebody living on that land all that time ago would have been wearing these around their neck. Anyway, where did I get to? So what we then see is later, these were the earliest sound changes, and then over the course of the next few hundred years, we see further runes being added to eventually form the Futhorc as we know it. Now I want to show you this. Yes, I've come to the woods with a sayax, like you do. Now this is a replica, of course, of an amazing sayax known as the Thames sayax, or the sayax of Begnoff, which is a 10th century Anglo-Saxon sayax, which was found in 1857 near Battersea. Now this is the only complete Futhorc inscription that we have which isn't in a manuscript. So it actually has several variant forms. I'm just going to show you. Isn't it amazing? Obviously the original would have been inlaid with copper, I believe. But this is the only example that we have of the complete Futhorc. So it's quite an amazing find. Obviously a lot of the runic finds are there's lots of coins that have been found that have the runes, but this is the only artifact which has the complete Futhorc on it. Now there are 29 Anglo-Saxon rune poems, and I will cover all of those. Further runes were added which are known as the Northumbrian runes, There are no rune poems with those ones, but if I don't run out of steam, I will cover those as well in the course of this runic series. So why am I doing this runic series? Well, I had great fun doing my last series, which was all about the Elder Futhark and how it fits into the Wheel of the Year. But during that time I started being drawn towards Anglo-Saxons and the spirituality associated with them, the culture and the mythology. A few years back I was walking in the Forest of Dean and I came to a sacred well which had a pool, and I saw floating in there a branch, a beautiful beech branch. It had obviously been in there a while, and I just knew I had to have it. So my plan was to make a set of Anglo-Saxon runes out of it. So I asked my dad if he'd kindly cut it up for me, which he did. And it turned out that the number of discs that he was able to get out of it was the exact number of the Anglo-Saxon runes. So I knew that I had to use that branch to make my Anglo-Saxon runes. And I've been so busy I haven't done it yet, so I hope to do it over the course of this runic series. I then found that there was a historian called Sharon Turner, and I actually changed the spelling of my name, so that's how I was christened, who was born in 1768 and died in 1847. Now, between 1799 and 1805, he wrote 4 volumes called The History of the Anglo-Saxons. And I was kind of like really freaked out when I saw that. I thought, oh my goodness, this is just bonkers. I didn't realise that Sharon was previously a man's name. Anyway, so this, at the time, Britain was involved in wars with France, so there was a real kind of anti-Norman flavour going on. So this was quite a seminal work, and it was quite influential at the time that he wrote it. So I haven't read them all yet. I will do. But to find that there was someone with the same name as me who had written these 4 volumes was just one of the many things which kind of the weird synchronicities that led me to be doing this. Then of course there was the DNA. I might have mentioned this on my last series. I managed to get one of my 2 brothers to donate some DNA to me, and interestingly what I found through research was that my paternal DNA originated in Frisia. So and then of course the fact that the earliest changes in these runes also happened in Frisia, well, it's just another thing that's led me on this path and led me to be making these videos. So for a long time I have had the theory that the heathen religion just hung on a little bit longer within East Anglia than in other places. Obviously East Anglia was an Anglo-Saxon stronghold, and has very, very strong links with Frisia. And interestingly, I discovered that there was a bit of a pagan resistance going on in East Anglia, centred on Ipswich. Now, obviously Britain was Christianised. Now the question is though, some people say that the pagan, the heathen religion didn't survive the migration. I say that's wrong, and I say that it most definitely did, because the initial aim of the church was to convert the elites, and the first convert was King Ethelbert of Kent. Now whilst he became Christian, his people didn't, and he actually refused the requests of the Pope to ban pagan worship by his people, they basically carried on. Now think about the way humans are. The poor people, the common people, usually have some kind of resistance to the ways of the leaders, and it still goes on now, and will always go on. So just because the elite, the rich people, became Christian, it doesn't mean that the poor, the normal, the common people did. And I think it's very likely that they didn't. One of the first tacks of the church was to basically blend in with the existing heathen practices. And Pope Gregory wrote to Augustine with the instruction to destroy the idols, but the temples themselves are to be asperged with holy water, altars set up, and relics enclosed in them. In this way, we hope that the people, seeing that its temples are not destroyed, may abandon idolatry and resort in these places as before, and may come to adore the true King. So it goes to show people were not openly embracing this new way. Well, why would they? Why would they? Old habits die hard, and this was a culture which had been in place for hundreds, thousands of years, going right back to the Bronze Age. Christians also, of course, hijacked the festivals, and their priests dressed in ways that the Germanic priests had, like women. We actually saw a vicar the other day when I was with my daughter, and I told her, she'd previously learnt about Anglo-Saxons at school, and I told her that perhaps the reason that vicars now wear long robes is because it was copied from the Germanic priests who dressed like women. So it's all very interesting stuff. So later the church realised that this trickle-down effect that they were hoping to have by converting the elite and hoping that it kind of trickled down to the poor people, they realised that it just wasn't working. And that was when legislation was put in place to basically start banning various pagan practices. And the 7th century penitentials of Theodore, they catalogued a long list of pagan practices such as sacrificing to devils, augury, the eating of food which had been offered as a sacrifice, and the burning of grain for the dead. And it's worth noting that burnt grain is often found in pagan Anglo-Saxon burials. Now, John Ackerman in 1859, who was an archaeologist, he stated, "It is very clear that the contest between heathenism and Christianity was obstinately prolonged in England, and that among the people, paganism was not quickly eradicated in their funeral rites and ceremonies. A desire to lie among their kindred may long have prevailed over the remonstrances of the Christian priests." Now, obviously, history is written down by the winners, and so we find very little evidence of any kind of pagan resistance within writings, because they just wouldn't have written this stuff. But through archaeology, we can learn more. And as I mentioned, East Anglia. Now, archaeology tells us the story, and this is a story written through pottery. Now, decorated pottery was a very pagan thing, and as Britain became more Christianized, pottery became plainer. But within Ipswich ware was developed, and this contained a lot of it was more decorated, and it contained a lot of the pendant triangles. Now, these are also found on the rims of the drinking horns at Sutton Hoo, which I'll be talking about in my next video. And this is a very pagan symbol. Now, it's interesting to note that pagan symbols such as the swastika and runes were not used on this pottery, which might suggest that at this time these were still very potently pagan images, whereas the pendant triangle was still pagan but not as in your face as a swastika or a rune. Now why was this very pagan underground resistance allowed to continue in Ipswich? Ipswich was an important Anglo-Saxon town. It was also an extremely rich Anglo-Saxon town, and its hinterland was far greater than any of the other wicks within England because of the strong connections with Frisia. There was a lot of trading within East Anglia with the Frisians, and my mum has found at least a couple of Anglo-Saxon coins on my dad's farm which are Frisian. There are many connections between East Anglia and Frisian. Obviously I'm one of them. So the Frisian traders, who were still pagan, would have been in East Anglia. They might have commissioned pottery there rather than actually bringing it over from Frisia. But the church turned a blind eye because it was such a rich town, and it was bringing in so much money that basically they went, okay, carry on, be pagan, we don't care as long as we're getting the money. Hey, nothing's really changed, has it? Nothing's really changed. Talking about the East Anglian thing, I find it really interesting to look at the accents, because the Anglo-Saxons had diphthongs, which are like double vowels, and in East Anglia we're still using these diphthongs. I don't say hair, I can't even say it. I say hair, which is a diphthong. So I'm just loving the connections between the Anglo-Saxons and East Anglia, and I will probably go on about this quite a bit during the course of this rune series. So I'm going to be starting the next video I'm going to make. I'm going to be unorthodox. I'm going to start with the rune Why am I not starting with Futhorc? Of course, it's the Futhorc, so you'd think it would start with the F rune. But in my last series, I kind of was toing and froing as to whether I favoured the Futhark or the Uthark. I have settled on the Uthark, and I believe that I need to start with the rune and end with Freya's rune Futhorc. So I'll be starting the next video I make. The first in the series will be so I shall be bringing that to you soon. So obviously a lot of time and effort will go into making these videos. If you'd like to support me, you can buy me a coffee, and I'll put the link in the description. That would be very much appreciated, and would help me to get this series made. So I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who subscribed. Please, if you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe to it. I'm really looking forward to bringing you this new series. My aim is to take you back and help to bring alive this rich and vibrant culture of the Anglo-Saxons. Whilst this land has been invaded and conquered by many peoples, the Romans, the Norse, the Vikings, of course, the only real impact genetically on this land has come from the Anglo-Saxons. They had a massive influence on the culture of England, and it's an incredibly rich and vibrant culture, and my aim is to weave in lots of different elements from all different things whilst I'm talking about the runes, and try to bring that more alive for you. So I hope you will join me on that series, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. And thank you for watching. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Ayla.